Welcome to the Southern Roots Podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Simmons. And when it comes to the information presented in this podcast, I want you to know that I didn't start with history books. I started with my own family. And what I found completely changed how I see being Black in America. My family has been in Georgia for generations. Not just Atlanta, but also the land around it, with those of us from the city called a country. And growing up, nobody ever really explained what it meant to be from Georgia or to be from the South for that matter. It was just, we're Black, we're in a struggle against the system. And for a long time, I didn't question that. That's just what we were told. That was on every form, every document, and every box you had to check. Black. But at some point, I had to ask myself a real question. What does that actually mean? Because Black, it's not a place, it's not a nation, it's not a language. And if I'm being honest, I know a lot of people don't like this, but it's not even a culture or a people with a name that goes back thousands of years. Black is a label. And I started realizing I had never been taught what came before the label, but I was taught to be proud of being Black and to understand that slavery happened and that racism exists. But nobody ever told me what was before. So I had to go find it. I had to go look for myself. And I started with my family records. Because I'm from Atlanta, and like a lot of families in the South, our roots don't start in the city. They go outside of it. For me, Fayette and Coweta County, small towns, rural land, places where our grandparents, their parents, and their parents were already living. And I started thinking, if my family has been here that long, and I didn't find anyone attached to a federal slave schedule, then maybe we didn't arrive here on slave ships. And if that's the case, then what was really going on in the South before the census started recording our people? Because if our story starts with slavery, then everything before it is invisible. It's a myth. We don't know. And I didn't believe that our story started there. So I started digging. And the oldest ancestor that I found on record was a woman named Charlotte Page. Once I had that name, Charlotte Page, that's when everything became real. Because now, this isn't general history anymore. This is my family history. The first place I found her was in the 1880 census. This is post-Civil War. And she was about 41 years old, living in Fayette County, Georgia, Militia District 1293, in a town called Brooks, and she was married with children. Now I'm looking at something real, a household, a family, a life. This is a real woman living in Georgia after the Civil War. And the 1880 census estimated that she was born around 1839 in Georgia. So I was able to find my oldest matrilineal ancestor on record. And with that, a direct timeline was established between me and her. And that's when I realized something. To really understand her life, I had to understand what was happening before she was born. Because it's not enough to just find our ancestors. We have to understand the conditions they were born into. And when I looked at that timeline, I realized Charlotte was born in 1839, just a few years after the remaining lands we now call Georgia and Alabama were taken by the United States. So now the question becomes, what was happening in the 1800s leading up to her birth? Because if I don't understand that, I don't understand her life in the 1880s. So before I went any further, I had to step back and look at a bigger picture of the Southeast. So at this point, I'm not looking at a name anymore. I'm also looking at the land my family was living on. And now I have to ask, where do I go to understand what my family was experiencing? Because if I didn't find my family connected to a slave schedule, then I can't just assume that our story starts with slavery. So now I have to look at the land itself and the history of the Southeast, because that's the only place the truth could be. So I start going into the written historical records. And under Southeastern American Indian history, I was able to find accounts of the people who were living here before the United States took control of the land. And as I'm reading these records, I started noticing something. The way these people were described, their appearance, their culture, their way of life, it started sounding familiar to me. And at that point, I knew I had to be in the right place because now I'm not just reading history. I'm reading about people who were living in the same region where my family shows up in the census records. And if my family was already there, and these are the records describing the people of that land, then the question becomes, are these the same people? Because if they are, then that changes everything. Now I'm not just tracing my family. I'm starting to uncover a bigger story. And that story doesn't start with slavery, but with the people who were already here. So now I have to go deeper. I have to understand who these people were, what they were called, how they lived, and how they were described before everything changed. So now I'm going through these records, all of these historical records, trying to understand who was living on this land before everything changed. And I'm not just looking anywhere. I'm looking at documented sources from the 17 and 1800s, accounts written by people who actually studied, traveled among, and lived with the people of the Southeast. Because if I'm going to understand this, I need to see it through their eyes. So I start with one of the most important sources I came across, A Migration Legend of the Creek Indians by Albert Gatschet, published in 1884, a linguistic, historical, and ethnographic study of the Muskogee people. And in his descriptions, he writes, the peculiar olive admixture to their cinnamon complexion is a characteristic which they have in common with all other southern tribes. And in another passage, he describes them as a rather dark cinnamon with a southern olive tinge. So now I move to an earlier source, Travels Through North and South Carolina, Georgia, East and West Florida by William Bartram, published in 1791. Bartram traveled throughout the Southeast, observing the people firsthand. And in his account, he describes them as their complexion of a reddish brown or copper color, their hair long, coarse, and black as a raven. And he goes further, describing them as tall, erect, and moderately robust, with features regular and countenance open, dignified, and placid. Now, I come across another source, The History of the American Indians by James Adair, published in 1775. Now this one is important because Adair didn't just visit. He lived among the southeastern nations for over 40 years. And in his observations, he writes, the Indians are of a copper or red clay color. And he continues, explaining their attachment to that complexion and how they viewed it as their natural and preferred state. And now I'm looking at 3 different sources, 3 different time periods, 3 different perspectives, but the same descriptions of the people in the South. So now I'm asking myself, if these are the people who were living on this land and my family was already here in this same region, and these descriptions match what I can see even within my own family, then what does this mean? Because I'm not adding anything to this. I'm not interpreting anything. I'm just reading what's there, what was recorded, what was observed, what was written down, long before any modern labels were applied. And what becomes clear is this. The indigenous people of the Southeast during the colonial period were described in a very specific way, a way that should make us ask questions today. Because if this is how they were seen, then how do we end up being seen as something else? So now I had to go back to where this all started for me. Back to the census, back to Charlotte Page, because this is where everything came to life for me. When I found her in 1880, she wasn't just a name. She was a person with a life, a family, a place on this land. But she was also something else. In that record, she wasn't listed as American. She wasn't listed as part of a nation, but she was listed as mulatto. And as I kept going through the records, looking at her children, looking at later generations, the label started to change from mulatto to black. Same family, same people. So now I had to ask myself what actually changed, because it wasn't the land and it wasn't the people. It was the label. Because the more I looked at it, the more I realized something. These were not fixed identities, they were assigned identities, recorded, changed, and reapplied over time. And that's when everything started to come together. Because now I'm looking at my family on this land in this southeastern region, and I'm comparing that to the descriptions of the people who were already here. And the question becomes unavoidable. If my family was already here and the people of the land were described the same way, then what were we before we were called Black? Because that question changes everything. And that's where this journey really begins.